Arkady Vargas, BScs3ABA, and now we are going to present Embracing Diversity and Inclusion. So, what is embracing diversity and inclusion? Embracing diversity is accepting different culture and tradition and even different aspects in life. It is being an open person in diverse life and whatever practices are there you respect it and appreciate. Leadership requires skill, a clear vision, and a strong commitment to establishing a constructive organizational climate. It also requires that leaders understand diversity and inclusion and the essential role this play in organizational outcomes. So the terms diversity and inclusion seems to represent distinctly different concepts. They are actually interrelated processes, and while not usually discussed as core leadership concepts, diversity and inclusion play a seminal role in effective leadership. So, why should leaders embrace diversity? Diversity leaderships bring a wealth of knowledge and varying perspective which can help improve the way your leadership relates to those inside and outside of your organization. So the word diversity conjures up a multitude of different reactions in people. To some, the word diversity suggests being enriched by the different perspectives, attitudes, and life experience that people bring to a situation. For others, the word stirs up feelings of unfairness, injustice, and exclusion. Furthermore, some people embrace the positive outcomes of diversity, while others resent the burden of having to adapt to those who are different from themselves. Whatever your reaction is to the word diversity, when you are in a leadership role, you must be prepared to address diversity. So, diversity and inclusion are general terms that represent complex processes. Diversity is about variety of difference. Researchers have defined diversity in a multitude of ways. Morbarak 2014, diversity is often used to refer to the mixture of races, genders, or religions that make up a group of people. Harrison and Sin 2006 define diversity as the collective amount of differences among members within a social unit. Friedman 2014, a diversity scholar, suggests that diversity is the representation of multiple groups of individuals with different identities and cultures within a group or organization. Herring and Henderson 2015 suggests that diversity refers to policies and practices that are designed to include people who are different in some way from the traditional group's members. And Herring and Henderson contended that diversity is about more than valuing differences between groups. It includes addressing issues of parity, equity, and equality. So according to a study by Deloitte and the Billie Jean King Leadership Initiative, Dishman 2015, of 2,700 individuals from a variety of backgrounds, millennials born in 1980 to 2000 define diversity differently than boomers born 1946 to 1964 and Gen Zers born 1965 to 1979. Millennials looks at diversity as the mixing of different backgrounds and perspectives within a group. Boomers and Gen Zers, on the other hand, see diversity as a process of fairness and protection for all group members, regardless of gender, race, religion, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. Millennials are more likely than non-millennials to focus on the unique experience of individuals' teamwork and collaboration than issues of justness. So in this chapter, we define diversity as the amount of difference among members of the group organization. As set forth by Loden 1996, the core dimensions of diversity includes age, ethnicity, gender, and mental physical abilities and characteristics, race, and sexual orientation. Secondary dimensions include communication style, education, family status, military experience, organizational role and level, religion, first language, geographic location, income, work experience, and work style. So these primary dimensions of diversity are more powerful and less changeable, while the secondary dimensions can change, are less visible, and are less influential in how they impact our lives. Inclusion is the process of incorporating differing individuals into a group or organization. It is creating an environment where people who are different feel they are part of the whole. Inclusion is about the majority incorporating the opinions of the minority and giving voice to the people who are seldom heard. So, Boysen 2014 suggests that when inclusion exists in a workplace, all people from diverse backgrounds will feel valued, respected, and recognized. And no one will feel that he or she does not have a place in the organization. No one will ask, "What about me?" And according to Ferdman 2014 suggests that people experience inclusion not only when they feel are treated well individually but also when groups of people who share their identity are respected and valued.
The Importance of Inclusion by Schatz, year 1958, argue that we express our need to be included by how we communicate with others and we experience less anxiety if we are need to be in the group. Much as the degree to which we want to others to include us. This suggests that leaders should be open their arms to include others, but not so much that that the individual differences of others get smothered or lost. So according to Schatz, being a leader, we need to accept the people with open arms without judging them, and that is what inclusion. In short, diversity focuses on organizing differences, and inclusion is concerned with embracing those differences. As Mears 2012 suggests, the diversity is about being invited to the party, and inclusion is about being asked to dance. Leaders often recognize the value of diversity but struggle with creating supportive, inclusive environments. Brief historical perspective. According to Haley and Stepnick, 2017, in the United States, diversity was the foundation of the country's democratic system. The United States was originally performed by people seeking to escape religious persecutions elsewhere. This ideal of seeking freedom drove to the country many groups of immigrants, all of whom had different values, traditions, and religions. As the country evolved, diversity also came to mean addressing the need of people who are marginalized in the United States, including African American whose descendants originally came as slaves as well as Native American who were already living in the country. So, according to Helen Stepnick, the diversity explained the concept about the juries and relations. What what historical narrate the experience by racial ethnic minorities. So, Hurley 2015 suggests that the approach to diversity in the workplace has changed and evolved over three periods. The early year of diversity, 1960s and 1970s, the era of valuing diversity, year 1980s and 1990s, and the diversity management inclusion in the 21st century, year 2000 to present. Moving beyond and inclusionary culture. Early years, 1960s and 1970s, this was the period of the civil rights movement in the United States. It was also a time when the federal government passed a series of landmark equal employment opportunities laws. First, the Equal Pay Act 1963, which stated that the women and men must 306 receive equal payment for equal work. Number two, the Civil Rights Act 1964, which prohibited discrimination in employment based on race, sex, national origin, religion, and color. Third, the Executive Order 1961 to 1965, which required organizations that accepted federal funds to submit affirmative action plans that demonstrated their progress in hiring and promoting groups of people who had been discriminated against previous. And the last, the Age Discrimination Act, year 1975, which protected workers over 40 years of age that being discriminated against at work because of their age. So, para ito na po yung summary ng diversity kung what time period it is, kung anong time nangyari. 1960s and 1970s, government addresses inequalities. Year 1980s and 1990s, different opinions and insights value. And year 2000 to present, different opinions and insights value. So era of valuing diversity, 1980s and 1990s, this period was marked by a new approach to diversity that emphasized acceptance and celebration of differences. By Thomas and Elley, 1996, the approach to diversity at this time broadened beyond an emphasis on race and gender to include many dimensions: sexual orientation, age, physical and mental abilities. So, in this time, Thomas and Elley was focused on the emphasis on race, the gender, that includes sexual orientation, the age, and the physical and mental abilities.
Diversity management. Diversity management and inclusion in 21st century to 2000 to present. Diversity during this period continues to be a major concern for organizations and society in general. Inequities between individuals and groups in regard to different in races, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and other dimensions remain unresolved. So according to Harvey 2015, points out that people today are recognizing that both organizations and individuals can benefit from diversity. So she points out that diversity today is harder to manage because of changing composition of workers. So the need to acknowledge multiple social identities and the challenge of trying to establish and maintain an inclusive organizational culture. Then according to Thomas and Elley, 1996, people feel that they are all on the same team because of the differences, not despite their differences. So, kasi sa diversity, meaning that an organization is composed of many unique elements. And when that elements was taken together, These elements will make the organization unique. Inclusion framework. Social psychologist Brewer 1991 argued that individuals have two opposing needs in regard to being part of a group. First, they have a desire to assimilate and be included. Second is they have a need to differentiate themselves from the group. So according to Shore and Collegius 2011, develop an inclusion framework. The framework illustrates how varying levels of belongingness, the desire to be included and interact with uniqueness, the desire to maintain one's own identity, and result in the four quadrants shown below. So here's the four quadrants. The first one is the exclusion quadrant, top left, represents individuals in a group or organization who feel left out and excluded. They do not feel a part of things and they do not feel valued. So exclusion occurs when organizations fail to see and value the unique qualities of diverse employees and fail to accept them as organizational insiders. Next one is the differentiation quadrant, lower left. Describes individuals who feel unique and respected but who also feel left out and not a part of in group. So differentiation occurs when organizations accept and value the unique qualities of members who are different but then fail to let this individual become full member of the organization. Next one is the assimilation quadrant, top right. So they represent people who feel they are insiders and in the organizational in-group but whose unique characteristics are not really valued by the organization. So an example of assimilation could be a Native American college student who is 100% involved and accepted in the classroom but whose unique heritage is not acknowledged by the others, who respect him to give up the heritage to blend in the dominant group. So the inclusion quadrant, lower right, describes individuals who feel they belong and are valued for their unique beliefs, attitudes, values, and backgrounds. These quadrants represent the optical way of address diversity. It means, in short, accepting others and at the same time valuing them for who they are without requiring them to give up valued identities and cultural features. So the inclusion framework is useful for understanding ways to address diversity because it illustrates inclusion as an integration of two factors, which is an individual connectedness to others and the person's individuality, which is the uniqueness.
Diversity and inclusion in practice. Benefits of diverse leadership. To understand this process, Ferdman 2014 suggests treating inclusion as a multi-level process centered on each individual experience of inclusion. Inclusion exists when individuals experience it. Ferdman's framework illustrates how inclusion at one level is related to the way inclusion is practiced at others' level. As shown at the top of model, societal inclusive practice is the way a society or community thinks about and addresses inclusion affects the way an individual experiences it. Moving down the model, organizational policies and practices also influence the inclusion experience. For instance, of a new employee training program at a retail store, foster acceptance of customers who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. It may help these customers feel welcome shopping at the store. At the next level, leadership inclusive practices. Leaders need to set the tone of inclusion and hold followers accountable for inclusion practices. For example, during a staff meeting of a department that is predominantly male, the head for the department gives a female staff member time to voice her opinions to the others. She will feel that her opinions matter. It will show how to listen to others and value their opinions. At the group inclusive practices level, group promote inclusion when they establish enabling norms that give everyone in the group an equal chance to voice their opinion, acknowledge and respect individuals' differences, promote collaborative work on tasks, and address conflicts productivity. When a group is functioning inclusively, it is positive to group members, not toxic. In the next level, interpersonal inclusive behavior. Through our interpersonal communicate with others, we let them know our need to be, our willingness to include others, and our willingness to have others include us. Interpersonal inclusion happens when we ask others for their opinions and are interested in who they are, but will enable them to maintain their personal space as individuals. Individual inclusion experience is the foundation of this model framework. This is the degree to which individuals feel safe, trusted, accepted, respected, supported, values, fulfilled, engaged, and authentic in their working environment, both as individuals and as members of particular identity groups. The experience of individual inclusion is affected by the inclusion impact these other levels. The different levels of inclusion in the framework can influence the other levels and also identifies that influence of inclusion travels back up the levels from individuals to societal. Inclusion can and should happen at many levels. As a leader, the challenge is to foster that sense of inclusion among one's followers as well as influence the organization approach to diversity and inclusion. Leader practices that advance diversity and inclusion. Ferdman et al. Identified 6 key components of the experience of inclusion. Components are like the ingredients of inclusion. When followers experience these components, they feel included. Number 1. Feeling safe. In situation where one person feels different from others, the leader plays a fundamental role in letting that person know that he or she will not be hurt physically or psychologically if his or her ideas differ from others, and that he or she will not be ridiculed or criticized for expressing these ideas. Leaders need to communicate with each other, their followers, in such a way that all of them feel they are a part of the whole. It is a safe feeling for individuals to know well they will not be rejected by the group for their uniqueness. Number 2. Feeling involved and engaged. Helping followers find this feeling is a challenge for leaders, but worthwhile because engaged and involved followers are more productive and satisfied. Leaders must find ways to help individuals become involved and immersed in the larger group's efforts. Leaders need to share information freely so that followers feel like full participants in the workings of the group or organization. People feel involved and engaged when they know they are full-fledged group members and that their participation matters. Number 3. Feeling respected and valued. Practicing the golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated, is at the core of how leaders can help followers feel respected and valued. None of us like to be judged, stereotyped, ridiculed, singled out, disconfirmed, ignored, or belittled. Followers want to be feel that they belong and are connected to the group, that the leader trusts and cares about them, and that they are intrinsic to the group. Number 4. Feeling influential. All of us have unique ideas and positions on issues. When people express their ideas and are heard, they feel like they exist and that they are meaningful. We all want to be influential, to put our stamp on things, to touch the world and have our efforts mean something. It is critically important for leaders to recognize the followers have a need to have an impact, to express themselves in a way that affect others. Effective leaders help followers feel influential when they recognize that followers want to be heard and have an impact. Number 5. Feeling authentic and whole. There is always a certain amount of pressure to assimilate to the group or organization mission, norms, and values. This pressure creates tension within individuals because in order to be accepted with the larger group, they often find it necessary to hide or downplay unique characteristic of themselves or the group with whom they identify. The tension between wanting to be yourself with while also wanting to be a part of the group can be counterproductive to one's feeling authentic and whole. Leaders can address this tension for followers by creating an atmosphere where individuals feel free to be as honest and transparent as they are comfortable being. To be transparent and authentic, followers need to feel trust from the leaders. Number 6. Recognizing, attending to, and honoring diversity. In any group or organization, people want to be treated fairly. They do not want to be discriminated against because of their social identity or the identity of their social groups. As a leader, each of us has the responsibility to be fair-minded and open-minded toward all of our followers, but dealing with diversity is not just about fairness. It is also about acknowledging differences and fully embracing them even if it produces conflict. Leaders to be attentive to recognizing the ways people differ and honoring the individuality of each of them.
I'm Gianluigi Balmores, and I will discuss barriers to embracing diversity and inclusion. Leaders can run into four common barriers, both on individual level and on organizational level. These are the ethnocentrism, prejudice, stereotypes, and privilege. In order to effectively handle diversity and develop inclusion, the organization leader must have faced this obstacle head-on. So first, ethnocentrism is the tendency for individuals to place their own groups, ethnic, racial, or cultural at the center of their observation of others and the world. Ethnocentrism is the perception that one's own culture is better or more natural than culture of others. People frequently prioritize and appreciate their own belief. They frequently overlook other people's distinctive viewpoints because they hold attitudes and beliefs that are superior to those of other groups. A leader cannot avoid issues related to ethnocentrism. A leader must have recognized his or her own ethnocentrism as well as understand and to degree tolerate the ethnocentrism of others. In reality, it is balancing up for leaders. On the other hand, leaders need to promote and be confident in their own ways of doing things on the other. They need to be sensitive to legitimacy of the way of other cultures. The next is prejudice. Closely related to ethnocentrism is prejudice. Prejudice is largely a fixed attitude, belief, or emotion held by an individual about another individual or group that is based on faulty or unsubstantiated data. The prejudice refers to judgment we make about others based on previous decisions or experiences and involve inflexible generalization that are persistent to change or evident to the contrary, according to Pentero and Pedersen, 1992. Prejudice is a self-centered rather than its consideration of other is one of its key issues. at the expense of other, it aids us in finding balance for ourselves. Prejudice inducing attitude also prevent understanding because they put up barrier that make it difficult to see the many aspects and traits of other. A skilled leader needs to think about recognize and address with systematic discrimination exists within his or her organization and find a way to create inclusion with followers and group who exhibit a multitude of differences. The next is stereotypes. Stereotype is a fixed belief held by an individual that classified a group of people with a similar characteristic as alike. Stereotype allow people to respond to complex information and make meaning from it by either generalizing it or putting a blanket category around it. It is a way of processing information quickly. Stereotypes for leaders, stereotypes are a barrier to diversity and inclusion because stereotypes categorize individual followers into a single classification, which prevent the leader from seeing each individual unique merits and qualification. Because stereotypes are mental quick cuts, leader can avoid considering each follower more closely. For example, if a college professor who teaches three classes label one class as a good class and the other two as a bad class. Based on experience he has had with some student in those classes, the stereotype will prevent him from seeing the many good qualities of the individual in the bad classes and also negative qualities of the student in the good class. Stereotypes have significant impact on how leaders treat followers to include followers and embrace them fully. Leaders need to be attentive and open to individual nuances of each of their followers. Privilege. The final barrier to inclusion is privilege. Privilege is an advantage held by a person or a group that is based on age, race, ethnicity, gender, class, or some other cultural dimension, which give us to those who have it power over those who don't. Privilege has been described as an unfair advantage that some people have in comparison to others. Privilege is a barrier to inclusion. Leaders must have examined themselves to see if they are more fortunate than others, including their followers. Leaders are frequently unaware of their privilege since leadership involves a power imbalance between them and their followers. Leader must not only address this barrier as they occur with their followers, must also take a critical look at their biases regarding diversity and work to eliminate these barriers in their own lives. According to Furman framework, inclusion is a fluid process that must take place on both an individual and societal level. Effective leaders recognize the importance of diversity and make it focal point of their leadership.